Our first reading this morning comes from 1 Corinthians 12. Now, there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it's the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the one Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another the discernment of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, who allots to each one individually, just as the Spirit chooses. Our chorus is 778, Lord, you give the Great Commission. We're singing the first two verses. Reading from the Gospel of John. Jesus looked up and saw a crowd of people coming toward him. He said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough bread for all these people to eat?" Philip answered, "We would all have to work a month to buy enough bread for each person here to have only a little piece." Andrew said, "Here is a boy with 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 little fish, but that's not enough for so many people." Jesus said, "Tell everyone to sit down." This was a place with a lot of grass, and about 5,000 men sat down there. Jesus took the loaves of bread and gave thanks for them. Then he gave them to the people who were waiting to eat, and he did the same with the fish. He gave them as much as they wanted. They all had plenty to eat. When they finished, Jesus said to his followers, "Gather the pieces of fish and bread that were not eaten. Don't waste anything." So they gathered up the pieces that were left. The people had started eating with only 5 loaves of barley bread, but the followers filled 12 large baskets with the pieces of food that were left. I remember as a child going with a friend to his church to listen to a missionary talk about the things that he had done in ministering to the tribespeople of the Amazon basin. He described courageous encounters with people who really had not had any kind of encounter with the outside world throughout their entire existence. The extremely primitive ways in which they lived and which he and his family lived when they were with the people of the Amazon. The daily hardships and often dangerous struggles of bringing Christ's message to the indigenous people there. Of course, the best part of the talk was when he brought out the spider monkey that he had brought with him back from the Amazon, and he was allowing it to climb on the trees and that he had set up in the sanctuary. And so as kids, we were just delighted to be able to see this thing. And we kept telling him to let it off of its leash, but he never did. It was amazing and mind-blowing, and although it was a very long time ago and I was just a child, I do remember thinking to myself how awesome it would be to be a missionary just like this guy. But as a child, of course, I also felt very small and insignificant in comparison. How could I, after all, do anything like that in the name of Christ? I wasn't even able to conceive of how I could do something like that. I often have the same feeling whenever I pick up a Presbyterian record or read through one of the mission studies from the Women's Missionary Society. I find myself encountering missions and ministries that are cutting edge. Bold, faithful congregations, bold, faithful opportunities for serving. The articles and stories that are included in the record or the glad tidings or the mission studies, they're there to inspire us, to inspire our financial support for these projects, to inspire us to greater faithfulness, to inspire us to dream big, to inspire us in our service to Christ and to the church. But I find more often than not, the unintended side effect is I often find myself feeling once again that sense of inadequacy. How come I'm not engaged in equally bold ventures in ministry? Why has no one ever written up a story or an article about the things that I've accomplished or tried to accomplish? And I feel sometimes in reading these stories just overwhelmed, exhausted, and sometimes disheartened in the face of such amazing stories of service. As a minister, I have attended workshops from time to time on church growth. And they always have that one guy from that one church that has done everything right and seen amazing growth in the span of 5 years that turned their church from a failing situation into a transformative enterprise that resulted in a new building and multiple services and amazing missionary outreach. And if you just follow these 5 easy steps, which are never easy, by the way, you too can see such success in your ministry. When in reality, I sit there thinking to myself, why haven't I accomplished what this person has? How come my career has been so insignificant? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my faith that I don't have the same glory, that I can't claim the same successes as this guy up there? Now don't get me wrong, I really don't spend a lot of time in self-pity. But there are just some experiences, some encounters where I, and perhaps where you, think, why has ministry been so hard? Why hasn't there been greater success? And the stories that are told about people doing marvelous stuff in the name of Christ, the examples of service and faithfulness that we encounter are important. They are vital as we come to understand our own call to ministry and service. So I don't want us to brush aside such examples of spirited service as if they're really fake or they don't mean anything to us. They do have value. But I also don't want us to use them as artificial measuring sticks of our worth. I don't want us to use them to define our Christian service as valuable or not. That's why I chose this story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. Not because I want to look at the miraculous accomplishments of the story or to hold up Jesus as an example of what we might achieve if only we had enough faith. I chose this story because I want us to look at what is often an easily overlooked aspect of the story. And Andrew said to Jesus, "Here is a boy with 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 little fish, but that is not enough for so many people." Here is a ministry challenge of immense proportions. And what do we have to bring to this challenge? 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. That's all. That's our starting place. A child and his lunch. A child who we can assume volunteers his food. That's how he comes to the notice of Andrew. The child maybe overhears what Jesus is asking of the disciples, and he steps forth and is willing to share what he has. And even if what the kid offers is rightly considered by Andrew and the others to be entirely insignificant, it provides a powerful starting point for the story. It isn't a case that the child has been asked to give more than he is capable of giving. He volunteers what he has. Only what he has, because that's all that he can give, after all. But the result of such sharing is that thousands are fed. Now, that might be a case of miraculous multiplication, or it might be a case of others witnessing what this child has done, the generosity that this child shows, and so they in turn pull out their lunches and begin to share it around until everyone is fed. Everyone holding nothing back, sharing it with their neighbor. The point is, the child offers what he has. He gives what he can, what he is able, in service to others. When we are called into service, when we participate in the ministries of our church, we're not expected to give more than what we are capable of giving. Be it time, energy, money, skills, gifts, determination, confidence, faith, compassion. We can only give what we have. But as with the child in the story, there is significance in giving what we have, in giving what we can. When we commit to serve Christ, when we confidently embrace the call to be Christ's hands within our community, we aren't settling for less. We aren't holding back what we have, worried that there won't be enough for us. We may be giving only what we can, but what we can, we give. As the child's example reveals to us, our commitment to service, our generosity of faith and spirit need not be a grand and awesome gesture. Our choice to serve, to give what we were able, might seem insignificant, but it might also result in a life-changing impact to the church and the lives of the people we minister to and with. The only expectation of service is that we give what we can. Whether it be 5 loaves and 2 fish or a banquet for 5,000, it is the commitment to participate that makes our gift of service significant. Maybe it isn't as impressive as the missionary working in the Amazon, or the creation of a mega church, or some grand impressive accomplishment that is written up in mission journals around the world. But that does not diminish our service. It does not make our 5 loaves and 2 fish unimportant, unvalued. As the child's story reveals, even the most humble of offerings can have profound implications for our ministry. Consider this. What are you doing now as a church, as a servant people, that you weren't doing 5 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe even just last year? What are you doing now that you couldn't have imagined doing just a short while ago? Maybe you are giving your time and energy to assist with the creation and distribution of our new newsletter, one that goes out to the congregation and eventually will reach out into the community. But really, how significant is that? It's huge. It's huge because it brings the presence of this congregation into engagement with the people of this community. It lets the people of the village of Shakespeare know that there is a congregation that is active and alive and ready to serve, eager to serve Christ and Christ's people. You weren't doing that last year. You had no plan, no vision, really, on how to connect in a substantial and meaningful way with the wider community. Now you do. What about the Vacation Bible Camp? 3 years ago, it didn't exist within this community. There was nothing being offered. Now, for the 3rd year in a row, this congregation has ministered in profound ways to the children of this region. 60, 70 kids a day came to the Vacation Bible Camp. Could you have even imagined that a few years back? And now it is reality, all because a few people shared their loaves and their fish. How about coffee time on Sunday morning? Pretty minor, almost inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. And yet, 3 years ago, you met for coffee together, what, once a month? Now, can you even imagine not having coffee, not connecting with each other, not building relationship together every Sunday? All because a few people offered their loaves and fish to emphasize the importance of creating a spirit of community each and every Sunday. Last year, there was no intentional, focused, goal-oriented way for the congregation to minister with confidence to the needs of those within our church and within the village. All compassionate service, all pastoral care was pretty much up to the minister, the paid staff person. Next week, the community care team comes into active service. People of this congregation volunteering to give what they can, to give what they have, to give who they are in order to share the love and compassion of Christ with those who are in need, with those who are lonely, with those who are in hospital or nursing homes, who are homebound and just need a sense of worth and being valued. And keep this in mind. My role in all of this has simply been to ask you the questions. How will you feed these people? But it was you. It was you, the people of Shakespeare Presbyterian Church, who came forward with your loaves and fish and said, "Here, this is what I have to offer. Here are my ideas. Here is my passion. Here is my hope about what it means to be the church within this community. You are the ones who created the after-school program, who made Vacation Bible Camp a reality, who provided and provide Sunday school for your children through the school year, who created a powerful ministry of compassion, who crafted a newsletter to tell your story, who envisioned ways to connect with the wider community by getting involved in the life of the village in the name of Shakespeare Church and in the name of Christ. You brought all of this to life. Maybe that is worth celebrating, promoting, proclaiming in mission journals around the world. Look, people of God, look at what 5 loaves and 2 fish can achieve.